Last week, my aunt, who is not well versed in personal finance or the automotive industry, called me up and asked if my husband HP and I would help her negotiate a deal for a 2021 Toyota RAV4. So, of course, we said yes. We spent most of our afternoon at a local Toyota dealership and we ended up negotiating a solid deal on a Toyota RAV4. But at the end of the day, I walked away from this buying and dealership experience with a really bad taste in my mouth. And all in all, I wasn't impressed, at all. And so in today's video, I want to break down my experience of going to a dealership and buying a used car from the perspective of a subprime borrower. I'm going to be talking about what I learned and took away from this experience, but most importantly, what you should keep in mind if you're somebody that's looking at buying a used car yourself. So let's get started. 6 months ago, I helped this exact same aunt buy a 2019 Toyota RAV4. And quite honestly, this 2019 Toyota RAV4 that we bought around Thanksgiving was a really great deal. We walked away with an out-the-door price that was actually lower than the advertised price, and I just felt really solid about not only the purchase price of the vehicle, the terms, and also the interest rate. Unfortunately, though, this exact same aunt called me up last week, said that she actually totaled her 2019 RAV4 and she needed to find a replacement. And she already had her eyes on a 2021 model. And going through this buying experience back in November for that 2019 RAV4 compared to the current buying experience with this 2021 model, I really wasn't impressed, and I felt as though the experience was pretty poor. And while a few of these factors that left a bad taste in my mouth are due to my aunt and her financial situation, a number of the factors were also due to the dealership and some of their shady business tactics. And I think it's important for anybody who's looking to buy a car to keep these things in mind. So to give you guys a full financial picture, my aunt is someone who does not have the best financial picture, and she is considered a subprime borrower. She is also retired and she really doesn't have an understanding of personal finance, which is something that is far too common amongst society today. And to top all of this off, my aunt is kind of the textbook definition of someone who will take whatever the car dealer says at face value. She truly does believe what people tell her, and she thinks that everyone has the best intention at heart, which obviously isn't the case. And so to put it bluntly, my aunt is a bit of a gullible car buyer. But let's first talk about some of the mistakes that were made during this buying process so that you can learn from these and not make them yourself. So number one is my aunt actually started the buying process on this 2021 RAV4 before she even contacted HP&I. So she went to the dealership, picked out the RAV4 that she wanted to buy, and then she told the dealer that she loved the car and she had the intentions to buy it, but she just needed her niece and nephew to look over the paperwork. This, in theory, was extremely nice for her to do because she didn't want to waste HP&I's time by helping her find the car that she wanted to buy. She wanted to make sure that we were just being used to look over the paperwork. And so while I do appreciate the effort that she put into this, I have to say that I wish that she would have just tapped me into the car buying process at the very beginning. And I really wish that she wouldn't have told the dealership that she had the intention to buy the vehicle. Because by the time HP&I went to the dealer, not only did my aunt have her heart set on this car, but the dealer knew this, and it made it very difficult to negotiate a good deal on this car. And this type of mistake is something that I see all the time. People see a car that they want to buy, they go on a test drive, and they are visibly excited about the potential of purchasing that car. And the reality is, whenever you're purchasing a vehicle, and if you want to get the best deals possible, you got to make sure to have that poker face and to not let your car salesman know how you truly feel about the car. So in hindsight, when it comes to my aunt's deal, I really wish that she wouldn't have looked at any cars without me. She wouldn't have told the dealership how she felt. That way we could have entered the negotiation without having to worry about the dealer knowing whether or not we're actually going to end up purchasing that car. The next thing that I noticed at this dealership is dealer markups. And if you're somebody who's looking to buy a car, pay attention to those dealer markups and call dealers out on their BS. Now, to me, this aspect of the equation was probably the most frustrating part of the car buying process, and it was such a blatant sign that the dealership really was looking to take advantage of my aunt, and I did not appreciate that. When HP and I got the paperwork for the 2021 Toyota RAV4, we ended up looking over the paperwork and noticed that there was a $1,500 dealer markup. When we asked about this dealer markup, this is what they said. And I swear this is actually what the dealer said. This is just a markup that we're putting on cars because now that we're not selling as many vehicles with the market turning, we need to make sure that we're still able to make money and that your salesman still has a job and is still able to get paid. So this market adjustment is just to ensure that that happens. So before, when the car market was hot, there was market adjustments because there was so much demand. Well, now that the car market has cooled off, there's a market adjustment to compensate for the lack of pay for car salesmen. Yeah, that's not how this works. Now, obviously, we were able to get that market adjustment taken off because there was absolutely no way we were paying $1,500 to compensate for our salesperson's pay. And there was very little pushback in getting that taken off, which leads me to believe that had HP and I walked into that dealership on our own without my aunt present, they probably wouldn't even have included that in the financing paperwork. But who knows? That's just an assumption. But other than that, we weren't really able to negotiate the price a lot. And I would say whenever we compare the price that we got the vehicle for compared to the advertised price, we actually got a better deal on the 2019 RAV4 that we purchased back in November rather than the 2021 model that we purchased last week. And truthfully, I probably attribute that to Toyota inventory, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But the point here is make sure to look for those dealer markups and just BS fees. And if you see them, call the dealer out and refuse to pay it. Next is pay attention to your debt to income ratio as well as the interest rate that you're getting on the vehicle. Now, interest rates are something that I've talked about a ton on this channel because as of today, interest rates are absolutely through the roof. And this was unfortunately something that I observed firsthand whenever we were buying this car. My aunt ended up buying this Toyota RAV4 for $30,000. She put down 50% because that's what she ended up getting from her 2019 RAV4, and she still had a 16.5% interest rate for the remaining $15,000. Now, the bulk of that 16.5% interest rate is due to the fact that my aunt was a subprime borrower, and truthfully, there isn't a whole lot that I could have done to help that situation, and there really isn't anything my aunt could have done short term in order to improve that either. But the one factor of her score that I do think had a heavy impact was her debt to income ratio. And I believe that this could be a cautionary tale for anybody who's wanting to buy a car after their previous one was totaled. My aunt ended up having a settlement of $24,000 for the insurance company with her totaled RAV4. She ended up getting paid out $17,000 of that, while the additional $6,000 went towards the loan to pay that off. She received this money the day before she went to purchase her 2021 RAV4. And so while technically speaking, her previous loan had been paid off and settled in full, this change hadn't been reflected on her credit score yet. And according to her credit report, she still technically had an outstanding car loan. And even though the car loan was relatively minimal, sitting at just $6,000, because of the fact that she's retired and had limited income, this really threw off her debt to income ratio. So whenever it came to getting approved for a $15,000 loan for this 2021 model, she ended up having a tough time and had to settle with an incredibly high rate. And while I don't know the exact impact of having that first auto loan paid off in full reflected on the credit report would have made, I can't help but think if she would have just waited 30 or 60 days for that payment to be reflected, she would have had a much better rate. And so I will say that if you are somebody who's wanting to buy a car after your car was totaled, if you're able to wait until that payment has been reflected in your credit report, it could make you have a better term, a better rate, and overall favorable conditions whenever it comes to getting financing for that car. Now again, we don't know how big of an impact this would have made given the fact that financing vehicles today is incredibly difficult, but I can't help but think that it would have made at least a little bit of a difference. But truthfully, I think the biggest mistake here was going out and financing a vehicle for $30,000 and using that settlement as a down payment rather than simply going out and buying a cash car for the settlement. That way you don't have to worry about financing at all. Funny enough, my sister was in an incredibly similar situation to my aunt last year. She had a Hyundai Sonata that she totaled and she needed to find a new car. My sister's a teacher, so not exactly rolling in the money, and she was paid out $15,000 for the totaled car. So we of course had to make the decision of, okay, do you want to go out and finance a car or do you want to pay for one in cash? And based off of the advice that HP and I gave her, she decided that she just wanted to find a cash SUV. And we ended up finding her a 2013 Hyundai Tucson that is clean. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a Toyota girl through and through, but whenever I look at my sister's $14,000 Tucson and I compare it to my aunt's $30,000 RAV4, I can't help but think that my sister got a significantly better deal. The Tucson has every feature you can imagine, from panoramic sunroof, heated and cooled seats, two-toned leather interior, backup camera, and more. While the only feature that the RAV4 has of those is the backup camera, which is required in modern-day cars. My sister's Tucson also comes with an extended engine warranty, so if there is something that happens to the engine, she'll be able to get a new one replaced for completely free, which is a huge plus. And I know that there are people out there that are going to say if you're going to compare a Toyota to a Hyundai, you're comparing apples to oranges. And in some regards, this is true, but not whenever you're a budget buyer trying to make the right financial decision. And if you are a buyer on a budget, getting a car that is slightly less reliable but is a significantly better deal financially, that is always going to be the right choice in my opinion. I have a Tucson in my Turo fleet. My sister has owned this Tucson for 8 months. 7 of those months had a 2-hour daily commute, and yet this car has been, knock on wood, bulletproof. If you're somebody who's looking for a reliable car on a budget, please don't sleep on those older cars that have relatively good reputations. I think a 2013 Hyundai Tucson is a solid car, and it can truly be purchased for half the price of a newer RAV4. Sure, if you have the budget, buy a RAV4, but if you don't waste your money. And the last mistake that I want to talk about is not paying attention to inventory levels, which is of course something that most people aren't going to pay attention to, especially if they aren't well versed in the car market as a whole. But this is absolutely something that you should keep in mind if you are a car buyer. As of today, car prices are falling and car inventory is increasing for most brands. You can see here new car inventory for May of 2023, and Toyota has the lowest inventory of every single major brand, which means that whenever it comes to negotiating power for Toyota, your negotiating power is going to be significantly worse than if you went to another brand of car. And while some brands are down in price double digits year over year, Toyota is only down 3% and is actually up in the last 30 and 90 days. And this is absolutely due to the fact that Toyota has extremely low inventory. And so if you are somebody who's looking to buy a used car, pay attention to those inventory levels because it absolutely can make a difference. And I do think this really hindered our ability to negotiate. But you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I wanted to make this because I don't think it's every day that you can view the car market from the lens of a different type of buyer. And viewing the car buying process from the perspective of someone who is a subprime borrower and someone who isn't well versed in personal finance and the automotive industry, it oftentimes can be eye-opening to just how predatory the automotive industry is as a whole. And while I definitely can't go and help everyone buy a car, I do hope that this video was valuable to those of you who are looking to make a purchase sometime soon. Like always, if you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.